Just like General Electric can build all the new power plants they want, everybody else is being shut down, so General Electric comes and says, you're going to be shut down in 1 month, sell to us for nothing. And people are like, here's the power plant. And the prices are doubling. They're laughing. They are a criminal mafia. Now, I know I'm ranting here because this is a time to rant. This is brazen authoritarianism. But they aren't dressed up in a Hitler outfit, so people don't recognize it. These are conscious demons. Lord Monckton joins us. He is the British politician, public speaker, former newspaper editor, and hereditary peer, formerly a member of the Conservative Party. Monckton has been the head of the policy unit for UK Independence Party. Goes on there, and I just can't break down his entire. He was the head of the policy unit, number 10, Downing Street. He also worked for the Universe, the Sunday Telegraph Today, and the Evening Standard, and ukip.org or scienceofpublicpolicy.org. Sir, I'm ranting, and I appreciate you joining us and giving us your time. It's just to see them engaging in these crimes, it's becoming outrageous. And now that you and others have exposed them, they're upping the ante and declaring total power over everything. And they say they don't care what Congress or Parliament does, they rule.
Well, of course, in the end, in a democracy like America, where no legislative power is supposed to go anywhere except Congress, Congress can take that power back. It can say to the EPA, enough is enough, no more messing about. If you want to exercise this kind of authority, you have to have a statute to do that. You haven't got one, and we're shutting you down. And actually now the EPA probably does more harm than good, and it should actually be abolished. It's no longer a useful organization. And what is happening, the mistake they've made, is that they have tried to politicize science itself. I've said this before, but it bears saying again. Science is a search for objective truth. It can't be politicized. You can pretend to politicize it for a time, but in the end, the truth pokes through. One of my favorite examples of this is when Hitler didn't like the fact that Einstein, a Jew, had invented the theory of relativity. And so he got 100 scientists loyal to the regime, the consensus, let's call them, to produce a book which was called 100 Scientists Against Einstein. And Einstein, who had had the sense to leave Germany by then and was safely in the United States, was asked by the press what he thought about this. And he said, gentlemen, it's really very simple. If I am wrong, it will only take a single paper by one scientist to demonstrate that. Doesn't matter how many scientists you line up in a row, that's not how science is done, he said. And of course, that's exactly the position we're in now. You have the scientists lining up with the state, the authorities, the EPA, saying the climate is all terrible, it's all gloom and doom, we're going to set the world on fire.
Publicly on the payroll.
Publicly on the payroll, but they're being caught out because it isn't happening. Remember that famous ClimateGate email from the original batch of emails, this one by Kevin Trenberth, who's right at the heart of this scare, one of the people that is perpetrating what I increasingly think is looking rather like fraud. And what he said privately in his email to his colleagues was, there has been no global warming for a decade. We cannot explain why. It is a travesty that we can't. That's what they're saying to each other privately. They know that this has all gone wrong. They know their sums are incorrect, and they simply can't bear to let go. Breaking news, I often do this on your show. I now have access to the first 3 major chapters that are being written for the next IPCC quinquennial assessment report, due out in somewhere towards the end of next year or the beginning of the year after that. And yet again, they are trying to pretend that the amount of global warming we can expect to get if we double the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by the end of this century, which we will, whatever they try to do about it, they're trying to say that will cause 3 or 4 or even 5 Celsius of warming, kind of 7, 8, 9, 10 Fahrenheit. Well, the answer is no, it won't. It'll cause at most half of that, probably more like a third of that. But they're still desperately clinging by their fingernails to this bogus story, even though it's now quite clear that the climate isn't responding in the way they predicted. And let me give you a little vignette from Durban, which illustrates how cheesily they're trying to cheat on the data and they're succeeding in fooling your average politician who knows absolutely no science. I ran into, in the corridors there, the Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, a guy called Michel Jarreau. And I said to him, I've just heard you interviewed, and you were saying that the science is solid. This is the new speak for the science is settled. They're now saying the science is solid. And I said, but on the question of what's called climate sensitivity, the how much man-made global warming are we going to get question, I said the science is very far from solid. It's becoming quite evident now that we've had no global warming for a decade. The numbers are just not coming out the way you said they would. And the fact is there are very good reasons in the peer-reviewed literature why we now know it's not going to warm at the rate which the IPCC is trying to peddle and upon which the entire scare rests. And he said, oh, well, the trouble with you is, he said, you date all your graphs from 1998, when there was a big spike in global warming because of a natural event, the El Nino of that year. And I said, no, I don't. Don't try to change the subject. Stick to the point. He said, well, you have to go back not 10 years, but 30 years. And I said, no, you don't. You have to go back 60 years so as to cancel out both the warming and the cooling phase of the Great Ocean Oscillations. There's a 60-year cycle in the climate. And if you go back only 30 years, you're capturing only the warming half. And then you say, that's all man-made warming. No, it isn't. A lot of it's natural. You have to go back 60 years. And he was furious that I knew that. And he said, I'm not going to stand around listening to lectures from you. I said, well, I've made a very simple point. I've said what I want to say. What do you want to say? Well, he didn't really want to say anything very much. He was furious that he'd been caught out in this very devious way of trying to present things, to say you have to go back to, say, 1976. That's when the natural warming from the Pacific Decadal Oscillation began, and it ended in 2001.
But let me stop you, Lord Monckton. You always get into science with these people, but you know from the Club of Rome and the rest of it that the UN set up, it's about power grabs and population reduction. And of course he didn't want to talk to you because he knows. I'm telling you, obviously you've attacked them on the science, and that's good because they wear this laurel of paid-off scientists and say, oh, peer-reviewed. But at the end of the day, it's about a power grab. I'm telling you, in Austin, you don't build anything unless they say, I live under a supreme Soviet.
The way to stop this nonsense, though, is to fight them on the science and on the economics. These are the two battlegrounds where they do not have control because the facts are not...
No, I understand that. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this.
Yep.
What about the big announcement? Then you've gotten the internal documents. You know what's going to be in this new Rio thing coming up. Fox News says they've got some of the same information and are reporting that the EPA, rather than back off, is planning to just start shutting everything down.
Well, that, of course, is what the EPA will do while Obama is still in the White House. And at least in America, you can do something about that. You can vote out your leaders and vote in a new one. We can't do that here in the UK because our leaders are the unelected commissars of the European dictatorship. We have no control over them whatsoever. And they have just made a complete mess of the whole of Europe's finances. That's now washing over into the rest of the world. And you heard it here first. Greece will go into formal hard default on March the 12th. So if you want to short the euro and make yourself a little money, from mid-February onwards, that would be a good thing to do. These people, their arrogance has long surpassed their abilities. And not only on financial matters, but also on climate matters, these people don't know what they're doing. And they're trying to grab more and more power because otherwise people will find out and sack them. Well, the time is now coming where it's becoming blindingly obvious as far as the climate is concerned that we do not have a problem on anything like the scale they've been trying to pretend. It's quite clear the climate simply isn't changing fast enough, anything like fast enough, to match their original story.
Yes, sir, Lord Monckton. I mean, respectfully, obviously, you've done more than anybody to fight them and expose them. I agree with you facing them on the science, but I'm saying then they just make up new lies, then we've got to expose those, and clearly they're discredited. My point is the mafioso nature of government insiders shutting down coal plants in Europe and the United States that aren't part of the inside club. I think that point is particularly devastating. The proof that this is just a mafia demanding environmental protection money if you want the ability to engage in any human activity. The statements by this UN coterie of villainous vermin openly stating they want a post-industrial world, these are they are unspeakably wicked. I mean, they are dangerous.
They are, but the way to deal with them is to meet them head-to-head on the facts. And that's what I've been very quiet. It's why they're so angry with me. You Google Monckton, you see this hate mail from all over the world generated by these people to try to destroy the reputations of anyone who dares to argue with them. But I'm still here. And the reason is that they know that in the end, on the science, I am trying to get it right, while they are trying to get it wrong.
But they are conscious authoritarians.
I'm more likely to get it right because at least I'm trying to.
Sure, but I mean, they are, from your research, conscious authoritarians.
Oh, of course they are. These are people who would like, it's the old phrase from the comic books, world domination. They're like the Mekon in the Dan Dare comics, we remember those, who wanted world domination. Of course they do. They are comic strip characters, and they would love to take the world over using the environment as a sort of green fig leaf to hide behind. But in the end, this is failing. This is the great thing, Alex. It's failing. It's failing because they dared to try to politicize science and the economics, for that matter. It's actually 20 to 100 times cheaper to sit back, enjoy the sunshine, and do nothing than it is to try to do anything at all to try to make global warming go away. It really is cheaper just to leave it alone. And people are beginning to work this out. The scientific literature in the economic journals is near unanimous in saying there's no point in spending any money on trying to make global warming go away. It's just money down the drain if you do. And gradually, even the dimmest politicians are beginning to realize that this is just a waste of money at a time when there isn't a lot of money in the kitty to waste. You've got America going bust, Britain going bust, Europe going bust because of extravagant overspending by exactly this class.
And environmental policy shutting down our industry. Which is
all of that, it all contributes to the loss of tax revenue, which makes the government's figures a great deal worse. So in the end, some very hard choices are going to have to be made quite soon by the electorate. And they're going to have to say, do we want to vote in a party which buys all this environmental...
Just stay there, sir. Tell us on the other side. This is key information. Lord Monckton's our guest. Stay with us. All right, Lord Monckton will be with us till 5 into the next hour. Then Hoppy Heidelberg, the head of the federal grand jury, who discovered that it was an inside job to blame conservatives and libertarians for the terror attack. He's going to be joining us talking about the new film, A Noble Lie, which is the only really professionally produced film on the subject of Oklahoma City. Available at Infowars.com, by the way. Sold out everywhere else. But we've got them stockpiled to get them out to people. And also, on top of it, you can get the Everything Special. All 18 of my films, 70+% off, $99.95, normally $360. And in some areas of the country, you can still get it by Christmas. Some areas you can't, but regardless, it's a great gift of freedom, gift of truth, and it financially supports our operation that undoubtedly is at the tip of the spear fighting the globalist. Now, going back to Lord Christopher Monckton, who's the head of public policy at the UK Independence Party, the fastest growing party in the UK because they oppose